In every era, there is a story, a work, or a piece of art that captures the spirit of a time. The Great Gatsby was a representation of the wild and shallow 20s in the affluent US. And even though it is a terrible book, its legacy is felt as we have to read it in our English classes to this day.
Sorry, old sport, I thought you knew.
The iconic photo, Migrant Mother, of Florence Owens Thompson has become a timeless image in representation of the Great Depression. And with the economy in freefall, we may be seeing more people just like it. Nearly every time in history has a work or works that is manifest of the world it's born out of. Which begs the question, what could be our piece? What's our work that speaks to hope in the midst of problems plaguing our society? I pride myself in being a purveyor of great stories, especially those with amazing messages and themes. In the past decade, I watched, read, and played many amazing stories with biting social commentary, unique perspectives, and diverse representation. But as the 2010s grew to a close, none of those stories struck me nearly as much as one. Persona 5.
You think it's a persona?
You see, back in 2017, I shuffled through a stack of games that I had obtained when I bought my PlayStation 4 from a friend of mine. So, Persona 5 had been sitting in my collection for months before I finally decided to play it. When I finally did, it became clear. This was the game of our generation. Okay, hear me out on this one. I'm sure you're asking how it's possible that this weeb JRPG from has-been game publisher Sega and barely AAA developer Atlus could be representative of our generation. Sure, the soundtrack is one of the most fire productions of all time, and the game radiates with more style than a weird fusion dance amalgamation of an off-the-wall Met Gala and a Basquiat piece. Well, my friends, sit back and prepare for me to take your heart as I tell you about Persona 5, the game of our generation, in this episode of Something to Talk About. It should be noted now that there will be heavy spoilers for Persona 5, so if you have any intention on playing the game unspoiled, you should click away now, and then come back later when you've completed it. So, in 2017, what I knew about the Persona series could be summed up in 3 points. Modern high schoolers, mythology, and Carl Jung. Maybe not in that order. I knew all of the Persona games had contemporary high schoolers at the center of the story, they utilized multiple mythologies from throughout history, and they drew heavily on Jungian psychology for their themes and gameplay mechanics. As I popped Persona 5 into my PS4 one day in 2017, I found that Persona 5 is no exception to these rules, but there's also much more to it. Persona 5 allows you to assume the role of a high school student named Akira, forced to move to Tokyo and attend Shujin Academy while on probation, after being convicted of a crime they didn't commit. So, Akira arrives in Yongen-jaya, a small neighborhood based on the real-world Sangen-jaya in Tokyo.
The place doesn't look too bad.
On his first night in his temporary residence, Akira dreams that he is trapped in a strange, velvet prison by a weird, long-nosed man named Igor and his 2 overbearing wardens. It is here that Akira is tasked by Igor to engage in a rehabilitation, which entails preventing an ominously impending ruin. The metaverse in Persona 5 is a supernatural world where people's perception or cognition of the real world shapes the psychological landscape. The state of a person's heart or inner self has major effects on what appears in the metaverse. In the metaverse, the reflection of an individual's real-world counterpart is called their shadow. Shadows are the manifestation of an individual's subconscious made manifest. Sometimes with shadows taking the form of grotesque demons and deities if their inner desires are twisted. persona is like a shadow, except that a persona is the acknowledgement of one's shadow. Where a shadow is your subconscious desire, personas are awakened when someone consciously confronts their shadow, seeing the mask that they are wearing, ripping it off, and bearing their true self to the world. The masks are representative of the facades that we use to face the world every day. Your team in the game is composed of persona users who face shadows as they traverse the metaverse. If a person's innermost desires become so distorted that their perception of reality is extremely warped, that extremely warped cognition creates a palace, inhabited by their shadow. These shadows become the rulers of their respective palace, with the palace taking the form of what they imagine a real-world location represents. For example, the CEO of a powerful company can view his company headquarters as a space station used to propel himself higher in society, while they simply see their employees as robots, or even fuel for their propulsion, treating them as worthless commodities and nothing more than tools for their own ambitions. At the root of each palace is a treasure. Treasures are items that are the root of the palace ruler's distorted desires. Treasures are often fashioned after a real-world object that holds great value to the palace ruler, whether they own it in reality or not. The treasure also takes on a different form when in the metaverse as well. An Olympic medal in the real world could be a royal crown in the metaverse, and so on. It is by stealing the treasure within an individual's palace that they undergo a significant change of heart, healing their perception of reality. This often leads to the admission of guilt by the rulers in the real world, wanting to do what's right to make amends for their sins and injustices against society. As you control Akira and invite other persona users to become phantom thieves, you begin plundering the prizes that propagate these palaces of distortion, with the mission of the phantom thieves being to bring justice to the unjust and inspire societal reform and public action against liars and tyrants. For many people who play through Persona 5, the thing that tends to resonate the most is the story. The story holds the weight that it does because if you take away the supernatural elements, what you have is a raw, messy portrayal of a society that we currently live in, and the primary themes of Persona 5 paint that portrait in brilliant clarity. I can talk extensively about how different palaces and palace rulers reflect real-life charlatans and abusers, or how the rebellious nature of the Phantom Thieves mimics the increasing desire for change and reform in today's youth and young adults. But these are simple comparisons that I'd like to look at on a deeper level. Villains have always existed, and people have always sought change, but there are four central themes that drive this home. Much of the millennial generation and the subsequent Gen Z are often characterized by the vast stores of information at their fingertips via smart devices and internet accessibility. With this, and millions of apps with various purposes, the power that people have at their fingertips is incomparable to any moment in history. In Persona 5, this is stressed in the very way that you enter and exit the metaverse. As Akira is presented with the ability to access the metaverse, Igor gives him the Meta Navigation app, which acts as a metaverse GPS, granting entry into palaces once you know the ruler, the location, and the distortion. Igor also sends the app to anyone who proves an ally in Akira's rehabilitation. The deluge of information is also important in-game. The constant barrage of responses from forum posts and social media conversations that update players on public opinion is interwoven between all activities, as anonymous blurbs representing individual thoughts and people's opinions pop up as you walk throughout the city each day. Early in the story, a student at Akira's school launches the Fan Site, a website that gauges public support for the Phantom Thieves while also being a place where people interested in the Phantom Thieves can congregate. At first, very few people care or even believe in the Phantom Thieves after their first target has a change of heart. But as the scale of their targets go from Olympic champion gym teacher to international CEO, the public perception and interest in the Phantom Thieves increases. Not too dissimilar to the smartphones many of us carry with us throughout the day, Persona 5 begs the question: when we have unprecedented power, information, and connectivity, what will we do with it? The increase of information has created an age of instant reaction. What's more, people's thoughts on that information is readily available in comment sections and reaction posts, even more in your retweets and your IG Live comments. Where in previous generations, one would have to wait until they connected with others or until they saw news to see what people thought about any given situation.
Smash, smash, smash!
Today, we can get immediate responses in social media like Twitter and Reddit, where people can say whatever they want with little repercussion due to the anonymity created through internet avatars and usernames. After the Phantom Thieves topple the first palace, they are introduced to Mementos. Mementos is basically the palace of all humanity. Mementos is represented as an ever-changing labyrinthine subway system. Initially, the deeper areas of Mementos are closed off from the Phantom Thieves, but as the public attention to them increases, the deeper areas of the palace become available. This allows the Phantom Thieves to have a greater impact on society, or so it seems. As the notoriety of the Phantom Thieves reaches its peak, and people begin to show overwhelming support for their brand of justice, the dissatisfaction with the government and law enforcement increases with statements like,
"Punishing corrupt adults who are up to no good? Police should take notes.
"This government is useless.
Who needs police anymore?
Mom, I'm hungry." While initially this seems good for the Phantom Thieves, we soon see that the side effects are far from it. At first, the support of the Phantom Thieves comes from an overwhelmingly positive place, as people have been bullied, abused, and marginalized begin speaking out against abusers and villains via a request system on the website asking for the Phantom Thieves to steal the hearts of distorted individuals. But soon, support turns to sensationalism, as polls are added to the fan site, and people begin voting for people that they want to see have a change of heart. It soon becomes a game for the public, not focused on justice or reform, but entertainment that can distract them from the everyday. It's unfortunate how similar this is to our modern life. In an era of Me Too, Black Lives Matter, woke, and cancel culture, it seems that no matter how noble our causes are, they inevitably become overtaken by A. arbitrary dissenters who claim these movements are merely ploys used to separate people, B. an opportunity for sensationalists to co-opt people's suffering and pain to show how just they are, or C. people who are hell-bent on painting these causes as the true villains. In a world where we can change our profile pictures to fit the injustice of the week, slap on a hashtag to show our support, change the world in a comment section, Persona 5 paints this picture clearly. In a world where one person's injustice is another's entertainment, virtues can simply be seasonal accessories to be flaunted, or fads to partake in. It's easy for the public to hop on the internet and vote for who they think the most corrupt people are, and upvote for their change of heart. But we often miss the distortions of reality that rest in our own heart. Even in marginalized community, bigotry exists. In black culture, colorism and homophobia still persist despite attempting to make strides and push through barriers of systemic injustice. Queer conversations tend to include or exclude arbitrary definitions of who is or isn't queer enough. This issue amplifies the tension at the root of Persona 5's climax, as the question that has been nagging the Phantom Thieves comes to its forefront. Asking, are we really helping society? This leads to the penultimate point. By the time the Phantom Thieves have defeated Masayoshi Shido, a corrupt politician who has been using the metaverse and palaces to manufacture his ascension to Prime Minister, the public has become so bored and apathetic to the Phantom Thieves, they don't even care that Shido is corrupt or that he's been behind numerous crimes, by his own admission. So much so that they vote him in as Prime Minister. As the public disinterest in the Phantom Thieves' exploits increases, it is at this moment the Phantom Thieves determine that there is only one course of action left for them. descending into the depths of the public palace that holds the treasure of the collective heart. Remember how we talked about mementos and how it unlocks and expands as you become more and more recognized by the public? Well, the great mystery throughout the course of the game takes center stage in this final arc. What exactly is mementos? What is its purpose? And what is the thing that people treasure the most? As they descend the areas of mementos, they notice at certain points there are people boarding subway trains en masse, being whisked away deeper into the palace to an unknown destination. Curiously, various crimson veins flow downward through the walls of the massive dungeon, also increasing in number as they descend. The group also notices that they enter each successive area, the aesthetic grows darker and more sinister and more macabre. With each descent into the next area of mementos, the tension and the confusion of the phantom thieves grows, fighting through numerous shadows, only increasing in threat, until finally they arrive at the very depths of mementos. Exiting the final door of Upper Mementos, you enter a giant nexus that turns out to be the final destination for the various subway trains seen throughout Mementos. Crossing through a large opening at the end of the disturbing platform, the Phantom Thieves find swaths of people waiting to be processed into a massive prison, extending into the depths of the world below them. Visibly aghast at the giant prison that seems to be the final destination for those traveling here in Mementos, the group continues into the heart of the public, spiraling down into an increasingly frightening abyss. As they pass dark cells with the aforementioned crimson veins connected to the prisoners inside, the Phantom Thieves begin wondering who could be imprisoning people here. After all, the Phantom Thieves were here with the goal of freeing society from oppressive palace rulers. But as they venture into Mementos' core, the truth is revealed. The public is choosing to be imprisoned here. Speaking to the group as they pass through, the inmates of the prison say emphatically that they want to be in the prison, and that the Phantom Thieves are just making problems by trying to change things. As they descend, they find that all of the inmates have given up on caring about responsibility and being accountable to anyone else. They've willingly chosen to have someone else make all decisions for them. They've given up all freedom. In America, we pride ourselves as the land of the free, yet we have the highest ratio of prisoners per capita than any other country in the world. But even when we aren't physically imprisoned, we enslave ourselves to other things that are just as life-stealing. Jobs we can't stand, relationships that are unhealthy, hobbies that harm us, and desires that deprive us. As you speak to the inmates of Mementos, you find that the reason they are okay with their imprisonment is that they have resigned themselves to a hopeless future. That things can't get better, so why try? People who are in charge should just be followed and exalted. And even if they commit evil crimes, they don't need to try to be better because the world's in the toilet anyway. I only need to focus on how my life will gratify my own desires. These same responses can be heard every day as people justify the prisons that they place themselves in. What's more, the regressive prison that we place ourselves in increases the apathy that we have towards anything of true substance. So we sit desensitized and void of any real fulfillment, especially when people try to change things. When the Phantom Thieves finally get to the bottom of the Mementos depths, they are shocked to find that the crimson veins lead to a giant chalice. Realizing that this chalice is the embodiment of the treasure of humanity, the team attempts to destroy it, to end the imprisonment of the people here. But as soon as they fight the embodied treasure, they soon begin to hear the people crying out in defense of the chalice, calling it the Holy Grail. With the cries of the imprisoned repairing the Grail, it soon becomes obvious that it is impossible for them to break the treasure of the people, so long as they continue feeding it. This idol created from the will of the people is Yaldabaoth, a god of control. With the overwhelming desire of humanity to sacrifice their free will in exchange for the security that comes without responsibility, This twisted distortion has manifested this malevolent god that humanity has chosen to be prisoners of. Our world is full of idols. Masters that we craft and mold ourselves, giving power to them by surrendering ourselves to them, thinking they will somehow bring our salvation. Whether it's our greed, lust, gluttony, wrath, jealousy, complacency, or pride, we surround ourselves with idols. And when people try to destroy them, our cries against them simply polish and repair said idols, choosing to stay slaves to them at the cost of our lives and others. In our current world of distress, our greed and sloth is more concerned with how we can come out on top financially or how we can make ourselves more comfortable, rather than whether others will survive. Our pride drives us to believe in a false invincibility that continues to prove how weak we actually are, jeopardizing the lives of others because we refuse to admit fallibility. With wrathful tongues dripping with venomous vile and poisonous hate, we attack our political and social enemies, silently cheering for the failure and even death of others, believing that this gilded reconciliation is truly justice. None of us are exempt. None of us are somehow holier than anyone else. We play ourselves thinking we are masters of the game. We create Yaldabaoth through our everyday, and our refusal to take responsibility for our own life fills those crimson veins as we hide behind masks that we've convinced ourselves comprise our true face. We've created this palace with a manufactured divinity at its center. We have spelled the end for ourselves. Or have we? When the Phantom Thieves are pushed out and even wiped from existence due to the lack of recognition from the world, they realize that the only way they can truly free the populace from mental prison is to get them to awaken to the truth of the idol that they have erected. The only thing that is able to stop Yaldabaoth is the truly awakened public consciousness, rebelling against the apathy and complacency that has enslaved them, and depriving the idol of the power they have given it. That truth applies to us in reality as well, as we cannot truly give people freedom if they refuse to take it. We can be the most inspiring person with prolific feats of charm and wisdom to point people to, but at the end of the day, if they refuse to act on what they see around them and on truth, they will remain slaves to the idols they have built. So it starts with awakening in ourselves. We must wake up to the possibility of change. In Persona 5, the only people who are able to see Yaldabaoth for what he truly is are the people you built relationships with throughout the course of the game. It is those relationships that can give us the strength and perspective that shatters our distortions of reality. The only way that we can shatter these misconceptions and these distortions is through building relationships, not isolating ourselves in cells and prisons. And not only when we are awake, but rise and go out. Waking in the morning does you no good if you don't get up and take advantage of the day. In the end, Yaldabaoth is defeated because the public chose to see the reality of the prison that they were trapped in. It was their desire to be free that opened the door to that cell and allowed them to step out and into the world. So wake up, and get out there. In the end, Persona 5 is ultimately about waking people up to the sometimes beautiful, sometimes messy, but most times beautiful mess that is the world we live in, and going out to make it better. But it doesn't start with waking up and looking at the world and telling the world it needs to change. It begins with looking at ourselves and asking, how do we change? Only then can we go out and bring justice to places of injustice. Carl Jung said that those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. Persona 5 reinforces this by showing us that anyone can have a palace. A place fortified by our misconceptions of reality? Do we see our workplaces as tombs that we are burying ourselves in? Is our community centers simply a bakery to us, where we can consume others as sweets to our own delight? There are no phantom thieves in real life. There are no manifestations of castles born out of our twisted desires. So we have to face our own shadows and tear off the masks ourselves. In a world where technology allows us to create our own reality and for our perception to be defined by whatever filter we place on it, it's when we step away from the technology and step into relationship that we can truly make change. Technology is a powerful tool, so is information, but it does you no good if we can't connect with others. This may be hard, but it's worth it, because it's when we face ourselves that we change for the better, and it's the changes in our own perception that truly leads to changing the world. That may not be much, but that is something to talk about.